Picture this. It's a sweltering day, and you just finished mowing the yard or pulling weeds, something strenuous. You reach down and grab a glass off the table. You can see the glistening droplets of condensation dripping down the side. And then you take a long, cold, refreshing drink of ice water. Fairly easy to bring to mind, right? But when's the last time you thought about where that water comes from? What even makes it safe to drink? Let's expand this exercise to a good meal. That last tasty fish dinner, was that fish exposed to toxins earlier in life? What makes it safe to eat? Maybe you don't think about those kinds of things too often, but if you ask the researchers and students at Ohio State's Stone Laboratory on Lake Erie just how often they ponder these questions, their answer is clear: all the time. I'm Jacob Carrozza, and you're listening to Now at Ohio State. We talk with researchers, innovators, and bold thinkers who look at our world, see what the real challenges are, and create the solutions that people need now. Lake Erie is an integral part of Ohio. From drinking water to fishing, vacationing to research, this Great Lake has great importance to our state and its entire ecosystem. But things like harmful algal blooms, runoff, contaminants, and more are putting the health and well-being of this pivotal body of water in danger. That's why the researchers and students at Ohio State's Stone Laboratory are so passionate about not only the work they do, but the quality of the lake itself.
So we're going to grab a water sample. First thing we're going to do is a measure of water transparency, or water clarity, and you always do it on the shady side of the boat.
The Now at Ohio State team took a trip up to the lab on the lake last summer to see their work in action. Because as we'll see, the health and quality of Lake Erie doesn't just affect aquatic animal life. It's directly tied to Ohio's economy.
I think if we can understand better how fish are responding, that relates then to the entire food web, the ecosystem.
Suzanne Gray is an Ohio State researcher and Stone Lab's associate director. She studies how animals, specifically fish, respond to changes in their environments caused by humans, and how we can better protect aquatic biodiversity. She talks with our Ross Bischoff in her lab about the work she's been doing, what makes Lake Erie so unique, and how Stone Lab is helping students achieve research success.
My research focuses on trying to understand how fish, an individual fish, responds to environmental change. So if humans do something to the environment, like cut down all the trees, and that allows sediments to be washed into the water, it makes the water muddy, cloudy, or turbid. How do fish see? Can they find their prey? Can they find their predators? And those are the sort of questions I ask with my research, and I do that in a whole bunch of different systems. I work on Lake Erie, focusing on game fish, so smallmouth bass, walleye. How do harmful algal blooms, so if the water becomes murky and green, how does that affect their vision, their ability to find their prey or predators? I work in Columbus, where it's a different situation where we have artificial lighting at night from street lights and streams. How is that going to influence the way a fish moves and interacts with its environment? And then I also work in Uganda, where we study similar questions, but with a fish that is really adaptable. It's a really robust fish that just can deal with all kinds of environmental stressors. And so we have similar questions in that system.
Why fish? What put you down this path?
Fish. I love water. I love to be in water, on water, near it. I grew up next to the Atlantic Ocean in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I grew up playing with fish, fishing, playing in tide pools, trying to catch the critters, watching them, seeing what they were doing. And I just carried that love of water and aquatic life throughout my career.
With regard to Lake Erie, why is this work so important?
The Lake Erie recreational angling industry is huge. It's more than $2 billion a year for the Ohio economy. So that means it matters to people. And so if I can do research that is of interest to me, but is also important for the people of Ohio and the Great Lakes in general, and you could expand that globally to recreational angling, then I think it's really important. So thinking about the fish, what they're doing, how they're responding to environmental change, whether that's through climate change or other activities that humans are doing that is changing the aquatic environment. And again, it's really important for the people of Ohio that are interested in catching fish, eating fish, or just being on the lake.
Another researcher who is really important to Stone Lab, and his work seems to go hand in hand with what you do, is Justin Chaffin. Talk about him and what he does.
So Justin Chaffin is a researcher and the research coordinator here at Stone Lab, which means he helps other researchers like myself that come up to do work at Stone Lab. But the research he is doing is incredibly important, and he does it really, really well. So he's looking at how nutrient levels in the lake impact harmful algal blooms, which have been increasing in severity in Lake Erie over the past almost decade. And so the work he's doing is informing the public, and it's informing policy so that we can better understand how to mitigate the impacts of nutrients coming into the lake and being part of the harmful algal blooms. He works with community partners, captains of fishing vessels who take charter guests out to go fishing for walleye and yellow perch. He works directly with them in collecting water samples, and I think that engagement is really, really important as well. So he's doing that, he's training students, he's working with a lot of institutions around the lakes to make research happen at a scale that is beyond one lab. And that's really important, that the research incorporates so many different angles, so many different components, so that we really get a better handle on these harmful algal blooms that are affecting the lake, the quality of the water in the lake, the quality of the lives of the people around the lake.
Stone Lab isn't just a research facility, it's having a big impact on the people who live here, on the people who enjoy this place, from making sure people have clean drinking water all the way to tourists coming up here.
Mm-hmm. So Stone Lab has a mission of doing research, teaching, and outreach. And I think they do all of those components really well. In particular, the outreach and engagement with the public. So anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 people every summer come through the Stone Lab area. They learn about the research that's being done. They get to see some research happening kind of hands-on. They're getting the information that they need about the lake, about the fish. They're invasive fish species, so which ones are invasive, which ones are native. Understanding more about the harmful algal blooms, the environment. And I think people take that and leave with a better appreciation for Lake Erie, the issues that Lake Erie is facing, and what we're trying to do to help the lake. And I think those kind of three things that the public learn as they come through here is amazing. I've heard stories of people who came through as a child. So they're visiting Put-in-Bay with their parents. They come over to Stone Lab one morning. They go fishing off of the dock through the fishing program for youth. And then they learn about Stone Lab and they come back. They come back every year, and then they take a course as a high school student. And then maybe they're going to university in the area and they come back again. And I mean, that is really impactful in terms of helping foster environmental stewardship. So it's getting people interested in the lake. They want to do more. They want to come back to Stone Lab. They want to learn. And we hope that they carry that throughout their lives. So they become sort of stewards of the lake and thinking about the water quality in the lake and the environment as a whole.
It's not just research for Lake Erie, but other people can learn from what you're doing here, right?
Absolutely. So we like to think our research has an impact beyond Lake Erie. I certainly get phone calls from people who are walleye fishing in some bigger lakes out in Wisconsin. If you think about Justin Chaffin's work and the harmful algal bloom research that's happening, I mean, that is pertinent to so many different lakes around the world. And these harmful algal blooms where the algae that's growing actually produces toxins, that is happening in almost every freshwater body where humans are around the water body. And so the work here is essential to helping water quality in the Great Lakes region. I would offer globally.
You were talking about the lure study. Your students do a lot of those, right?
Yes.
It seems like a pretty cool experience to just fish all the time, but they're putting in a lot of hours, they're working hard, but
Yes.
just kind of talk about those studies.
Sure. So we started the lure color studies several years ago. We had been doing work mostly in the lab, where we were trying to understand how do walleye see under these different water quality conditions. So if the water's green from algae or it's muddy and cloudy from suspended sediments, what do they see? How well do they see? And then we worked with the charter boat captains on Lake Erie, and we're collecting data from them using an app called Walleye Tracker that one of my PhD students, Chelsea Neiman, developed. And we were actually collecting real-time data on the success of different lure colors when they were out with their clients fishing. And from that data, we then discovered, there are 3 or 4 main color components of lures that seem to be successful under different water quality conditions. Then we started let's go out and test this. So we started doing these, we call them controlled angling studies, which yes, does mean that students get to go out fishing all the time.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. They get paid for it. I get paid for it. So we get to go do these experiments on the lake in real time, trying to test under different water quality conditions what color lures are the fish preferring. And we do test this in the lab. So I've got one student now, Mike Panka, who is testing with smallmouth bass to try to understand if they would make a choice between different lure colors, depending on the water color and clarity. But he's also doing it out in the lake. So he takes those lures out to the lake and goes fishing, and again is testing those different colors under different conditions. So we take what we learn in the lab out into the lake and test it out so that our work can be even more applied for the general public, for people, recreational anglers.
It's incredible. Talk about what it's like to be a student at Stone Lab.
I got my start in science because of experiential learning. I was not an A+ student, but as soon as I got into classes where I got to get my hands wet and get that hands-on learning, my grades went up. I found focus. I found something I was passionate about. And that is what I want to give students. I believe Stone Lab gives students an opportunity to learn, to get in there and learn not just the content, but the skills they need to have a career in aquatic sciences. I think they fall in love with both the research and the environment, both the physical environment and the social environment. It's a really amazing place, I think, to spend a summer where you are interacting with other students who are just as passionate as you are about the aquatic environment, about the lake, and about science. And you're also, like I said, surrounded by researchers and staff who share that passion. And it's a place where I think students can grow within themselves and really develop into great scientists.
So let's talk about Alex Kushner now. The first time I talked to her about you, she just raved about working with you and what she's learning and just how important you've become in her experience at Ohio State, not just maybe as a mentor, but as a person. When you hear those things, what does that mean to you?
It kind of makes me want to cry a little bit. My job is not easy, and people often ask, why do you do this? Why do you put yourself through some of the things faculty have to deal with? And it's because of the students. I do love what I do. I love my research, but it's hearing from students that they are getting a good experience, both personally and academically, that is what drives me now in my career. And so when I hear that Alex says that, that is wonderful. That's really cool.
And then a lot of these students, they're going to be the next generation of mentors in their own right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this could have a huge impact for years to come, right?
I really hope that I am creating a lab and a teaching atmosphere where my students feel included and safe and are in an environment where they can learn and be passionate about the things they're learning in their own way and be their own people. And I think if I foster that kind of a space for students, that they can take that forward when they are mentors, whether it's in industry or academia. Maybe they can take those ideas of caring for each other and being respectful of each other and move that forward to the people that they are working with. And that's what I hope that they can also do as they move forward in their careers and their lives.
In his chat with Suzanne, Ross mentioned a student at Stone Lab, Alex Kushner. Alex's initial trip to the States was, well, tough to say the least. She traveled from Italy to Ohio. She couldn't speak English very well. It was the middle of the COVID pandemic. But her passion for her studies and her athletic rowing abilities drew her here despite those challenges. And according to her, all of the new relationships she's acquired, the knowledge she's gained, and the research opportunities she's been afforded have made those hardships well worth it. Alex is an Ohio State rower and an environmental science major. For the past 2 summers, she spent her time at Stone Lab as not just a student, but also an undergraduate researcher. Again, our Ross Bischoff takes you into the lab to meet Alex. They discuss her work, what makes her so passionate about it, and how Ohio State has provided her with not only incredible opportunities, but the invaluable support of mentors.
Alex Kushner, thank you for doing this. So let's just start from the beginning. What brought you to Ohio State?
I guess my first main passion, rowing. So I was studying back in Italy in high school, and I ended up racing for my national team, the Italian national team. So I raced internationally, and that's how I got recruited to study at OSU. And I also knew a person that was already studying at OSU, Alessandra Montesano, the Olympian. So she told me that Ohio State was a great community and they had a great team environment and the school was really good too. So it's okay, I'm just gonna go for it.
It was hard because you didn't even know the language, right?
Yeah, I learned English back in Italy, but it was really different. It was just grammar, listening and writing. It was almost never speaking to people. So basically, yes, I learned how to speak English when I got here. I got more fluent.
So you go from Italy near the water,
Yeah.
to the middle of Ohio,
Yeah.
in COVID, not learning the language. That's quite a challenge.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. I grew up along the coast of Italy, so I've always been around water.
What kind of things at Ohio State kind of helped you through those early years? Was it the rowing? Was it the people? What was it?
I feel at first was probably rowing because I was still able to see people even though classes were completely online. I had some kind of interaction with people and people were always welcoming and they would reach out to you and check on you and make sure that you were doing all right. My first year was kind of knowing teammates that helped a lot. And then eventually I started to get people through classes, which made everything better. And then eventually I got to Stone Lab, and here I think I found one of my best friends ever. I'm still really close friends to a lot of people that I met last summer. And I think that last summer completely changed my experience up here or in the States.
You talk about your mentors. You have 2 really good ones, don't you?
Yeah.
Talk about
for
both.
sure.
Talk about Justin and Suzanne.
So last summer I was doing semester at Stone Lab and Suzanne was my advisor. And she's really good at talking to people, so she made me feel really comfortable right away, even though I didn't know her. And she really helped me to better understand what I wanted from this experience. She encouraged me to be more independent and just ask questions if I wanted to learn something new. So then I just started to reach out to people. I was glad to see that she was happy about what I was doing. Now, every time she asks me about school and life, it's not only about school and work, it's also about how I'm doing as a person, which I really appreciate. And that's also why I wanted to work with her and keep working with her back in Columbus. And yeah, then last summer I also got to know Justin. But I think it's really great letting students learning how to do research without being too invasive. He doesn't tell you to do every single step. He tells you the main things and then you have to figure out how to do everything and how to organize your things, which I think is really good. I feel by the end of this summer I will be able to carry my own research even after this experience. Last summer when I got here, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after college. And after last summer, I switched from ecosystem restoration to water science because I was so interested into it. But at the beginning of summer, I didn't know what to do with myself after college. And by the end of the summer, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to get a master in something related to water quality and hopefully work in that field after college.
So you're one of the REU students. What is it like as an undergrad to be able to carry out your own research project?
If I had to explain my project in a very few words, I'm basically looking at how bioavailable is the dissolved reactive phosphorus imported from Maumee River into Lake Erie, because we're like trying to see how much of that phosphorus leads to algal blooms, which are a really big problem up here in Lake Erie, harmful algal blooms. So basically, algae cannot uptake every kind of phosphorus. They can only uptake the truly dissolved phosphorus, and like we're trying to see whether other particles in the water affect this uptake of nutrients. So like if it does, it means that we might change our methods of forecasting or like land use management practices and all sorts of variables that may affect or be connected to like particles in water and the amount of phosphorus in water. Here I feel like I was doing actual research, like something that an actual researcher would do after getting its master or bachelor. But I feel like it really helps to grow as a student and like as a person, because you learn how to organize your data, how to collect data, how to take samples. You learn every single step through the process. And I feel like it's also really rewarding to see the final result, how data evolve and how your experiment evolves. And like even these small problems you might run into make everything more fun, I think.
One of your passions is sustainability.
Yeah.
Talk about how important it is to see this happening and to be a part of it.
I feel this is partially the reason why I came back this summer, because last summer I kind of saw how other people made some impacts, like good impacts on like Lake Erie, and like how their study was actually helpful. So like I kind of wanted to be one of those people doing research and like making impacts out there. So I'm just like doing a small objective of this bigger project, and like it's looking like how the land affects the water of Lake Erie. So like it really starts from the source and like goes to how like it affects the lake water. And I'm working mainly on the lake part, but I cannot wait to like see the final result and like the final findings, because it's something really exciting for me to be part of a team and like see that what I'm studying, it's something that it could be really useful for other researchers as well. I kind of fell in love with Lake Erie because it really reminds me of being around the ocean, because it's such a big lake that you cannot even see the opposite side. It has like a place in my heart now, and I kind of care about it, and I want to make sure that in the future people will be able to enjoy Lake Erie without too much harmful algal blooms.
Water is such a crucial thing. To plants, to animals, to ecosystems, economies. Not just for basic survival, but for aspirations, hopes, dreams, passions. That's why the work being done at Stone Lab by the researchers and students is so inspiring. To see people so curious, so dedicated to Lake Erie's health, our health, it's moving. The fact that students travel halfway across the globe to this lake in Ohio to follow their research ambitions, it speaks to the continuous pull, the constant tide that water seems to have on us all. So the next time you cast your line or take a refreshing swig, maybe take a moment to think about those who are dedicated to the health of our waterways. Now at Ohio State is produced by the Ohio State University's Office of Marketing and Communications. For more information, visit us at go.osu.edu/now. I'm your host, Jacob Carrozza. Thanks for listening.